Beekeepers like to say that you can make bees or you can make honey, but my goal for this hive is to make both. My honey harvest from this hive isn't going to be as big as it would have been if I hadn't made splits, but I've set myself up for a really great honey harvest out of this hive. If you want to see the split itself, you can check out my other videos. This split did not have to make a queen. Because it kept the second year queen, there was never any brood break. There was never any pause in laying. That is a huge advantage over my splits that are making their own queens. I split this hive about 3 weeks before taking this video. I gave them a second deep about a week before this video. I gave them 2 frames of drawn comb. I put those in the middle so the queen could go up into the top and lay. There are 3 main things that I'm looking for here. I want to see if they've drawn comb, I want to see what the population looks like, and I want to see how much brood there is in the hive. Up to this point, it's been pretty disappointing, but on frame number 4, we had drawn comb with eggs in it on one side. They're starting to work the other side, but it's definitely not as far along as this is. The 5th frame was not disappointing. There is some nectar, there's some pollen, but there are a lot of eggs. Basically anywhere that you don't see pollen or nectar, there's an egg in that cell. Unlike frame 4, which only had eggs on one side, this is really covered on both sides of the frame. When I split this hive, there were 8 frames of brood. I took 5 of those and I made splits with them. I left this hive 3 frames of brood. And it was because I was hoping to get a honey harvest out of this hive. I will say at this point in the inspection, while I was glad to see these eggs on these frames, I was a little bit concerned about the population that I was seeing in this top box. It was at about this point in the inspection where I thought, if I see this kind of a population in the bottom box, I'm gonna have to make an adjustment to meet my goals. Frames 6 and 7 really mirrored what 4 and 5 looked like. So with another half frame of eggs here, that makes for 3 frames of eggs in total. 2 halves and 2 wholes in the top box. 3 frames of eggs is really encouraging, but the population is low and the wax is low. And that's not a huge surprise because it takes a lot of bees in a box to get them to draw significant amounts of wax. We're in that period of time at the start of the flow where the bees are drawing wax in my hives as good as they are going to all year. Honeybees don't draw comb out all year long. In a different hive, over the same period of time, I gave them a second deep with 10 frames of plastic foundation, and all 10 frames were drawn comb by the end of 10 days. I need at least 8 of these frames to be drawn out before I can add any honey supers. As soon as I saw the bottom box, I knew that the population was a lot higher. Now, you're seeing them after I've smoked them down here, but there are just so many more bees in this bottom box than I saw in the top deep. You'll notice that this bottom box has far more foundationless frames. I used those exclusively in this hive last year, and as a result, there's going to be a lot in this bottom box. I did something to agitate them here, so you'll see that this is where I put on my gloves. I don't always do that for a feisty hive, but I really wasn't sure what set them off, so I went ahead and put them on. After skipping frame number 12, frame 13 gave me exactly what I was hoping for. It is wonky comb, but it is full of brood. There's some drone brood around the edges, but there's a lot of worker brood in there. Getting that much brood this early on the 3rd frame really started to give me some hope that maybe things were going to plan. Frame 14 continued that on because what we see here is a great pattern. So you can see where the brood is actually hatched out of the middle of that one. And everything had been relayed. So everything was either brood or eggs. With 3 frames of eggs in the top deep, I don't actually need to see that much more brood to think that maybe this population is about to explode. I'm certain that I had a very good reason for putting not fully drawn out frame in the middle of the brood nest, but it has been laid up and new wax is being drawn off of it. I'm counting that middle frame as a half a frame of brood. So frame 16 gave me even more brood. There were eggs throughout this as well. This queen had been extremely busy. If you're keeping count, we are up to 6.5 frames of brood in total, and this makes 7.5. It is also laid up. It's got a pretty good pattern. It's hard to tell because there is quite a bit of drone brood in the middle, but we are basically at the level of strength that this hive was as far as brood goes whenever I made this split. This frame makes 8.5, and it's covered. I mean, look at the pattern on the left there. There is some great brood that's about to hatch out. That ended up being the last of the brood that I found in here. I'm seeing this as it's a hive with a decent population of bees that is about to explode. Making the splits off of this hive certainly put a pause in the progress that it was making, but what I'm seeing is that it is about to catch up with a vengeance. I need to be very careful and I need to watch this hive very closely because when this population does explode, they are going to draw out the comb on that second deep very quickly, and I will need to super it the second that they do. This is exactly what played out with that hive that I didn't split in my home apiary, where I had to super it and then super it again over the course of maybe 4 days. Right now, I need to make sure that I have extra supers ready to go and frames. Despite the fact that I split this hive, it is in a prime position to go and make a great honey harvest. So that is my goal for this year, is to both get splits and honey off of the same hive, something that I have yet to do in my beekeeping career.